Well, good morning, everybody. Or actually, it's good afternoon, everybody. It's 1 o'clock my time. Um, I'm taking a long drive to Portal, which is on the east side of the Chiricahua Mountains. A lot of people live there because there's very low light pollution. And most of the people that live there because they're into astronomy and looking at the stars. And some of them houses have their own observatories. Pretty cool. But there's also a lot of history on that side of the mountain. There's a town used to be called Galeyville. Now it's called Paradise. And that's where Curly Bill and the gang hung out a lot back in the day. And then they hung out in Tombstone. But most of the time, it was up in Galeyville. Then I think, I don't know, whenever it was, everything changed, and I guess the silver mines got tapped out or whatever was going on, and so they moved the entire town of Galeyville, whatever that meant. They picked up 2 or 3 buildings and moved them to the north, probably only a few miles, to a town called Paradise. And so that was there. A lot of cool history. Normally I wish I had time to go up the mountain and look at some of this stuff, but I don't. Work, work, work. No rest for the weary. Or anybody else, really, for that matter. Fuck. So I don't know how the audio sounds. I'm clipping along here at about 80 some miles an hour, and my big ass all-terrain tires do make a lot of noise, so I'm assuming there'll probably be a lot of background noise. Even though this microphone has sound canceling on it. So I got to go to my pre-trial thing on the city's never-ending story of fucking with Mark. And they were kind of upset, or the city attorney was upset because I haven't, sent anybody the pictures of my house, which they want, so then that way they can assume, and start the permit process. And they'll consider the pictures as built. I'm not going to send it to them because then that starts the permit process, and I don't recognize their authority to ask me to get a permit on private property. And I've watched a shit ton of videos on this private property and the, and its history and how it started out to keep them black colored people out of them white neighborhoods. And that's exactly why it was started. Now it's become a little bit more sophisticated. Now it's just to do their rent seeking and grab money from people and fuck with the general public. So, what are you to do? Now, most people comply and just go, well, how much money do you want? And they go, well, it's not just the money, Mr. Boyle. You need to send us some architectural drawings and engineered drawings and all this stuff. And it's like, well, I don't got that kind of money. Well, you know what? If you just draw it up yourself, but your trusses will have to be engineered. You can't make that shit yourself. It's pretty high tech. It's like, yeah, because the truss could fall down and kill me. Big fucking deal. It's my house. So that's where that ended up. It's how we got to this position. And, I've been trying to figure out how you fight City Hall, because that's where the freedom is. If we can get control of our cities and our towns and our counties, then we can win the day. We can get our country back. What goes on in Washington might as well stay in Washington because no one gives two flying fucks about Washington, D.C., or all of our senators who have sold out, or our representatives who don't represent us anymore. So I personally really don't care about them fucks. And the way the Constitution was set up, really their opinion is irrelevant. But they convinced us all to pay attention to this two-party system, so whatever. So I've been trying to get a group together. It's on Facebook called Defund Bureaucracy. It's a private group. And all you got to do is go there and send me a link or whatever you do to join, and I'll let you join. I wanted to keep it downscaled to just, Cochise County, but I really want everybody's input, because we all fight it. We fight City Hall and bureaucracy every day, everywhere in America. And so I guess defund America, or defund bureaucracy in America would be a good idea. Little chapters everywhere, And I was talking to a lawyer-ish friend of mine, studied law, wanted to be a lawyer. Some problems happened with his wife's health, so he never got to do that. But, he helps people with legal issues, younger kids that get fucked over by the system. And I was like, it'd be nice if I could figure out what's the next step. Because, see, getting sucked into this bullshit was pretty easy. I just started building and boom, there was the motherfucker from planning and zoning telling me to stop work. And then I ignored that because they can go fuck themselves for all I care. Come on my property and tell me what to do and what not to do. I don't know what country he thinks he lives in, but this is fucking America. And he had a very official looking piece of pink paper. It was like a carbonless copy. So he had the yellow one, and then somebody else gets the original white copy. Very official. I mean, if you ever wanted to make a form look really official, what you do is you put, the letterhead on top, and then a bunch of fucking bullshit, and then some fill in the blank things, and then you just hand it to somebody and say, here, according to the city of Mark, Chaz, you need to change your clothes twice a day, and hand it to them. And as long as there's a couple carbon copies, I think it's pretty official, wouldn't you say? I mean, fuck, looks official. So I ignored it because it was a pink piece of paper without a judge's signature on it, and it had no real force of law other than what the city thinks they can add to it as force through their ordinances, but they never realized that those ordinances must, shall have Arizona's constitutional backing. Arizona Revised Statute number 5, blah, 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 blah. And your state's the same. It's just revised statute for the city of blah, blah in the state of Tennessee. Whatever. So that's where, I just decided to fucking ignore it. It's like, gee, I'd really like to do what you have to say, but you can go fuck yourself. And they didn't like that. So then the system kind of slowly starts sucking you into the sieve. So that wasn't too hard, They finally summons me to court, and the sheriff came out and handed me a pretty piece of paper with the judge's signature on it. So I said, well, fuck, I guess I'll go to court. I went to court and pled not guilty, and he said, well, then, here, You'll go to a pretrial conference on this date and meet with the city prosecutor. She's not your friend. She's not there to help you. She's there to prosecute you for the city. That's her job. So actually, it was a pretty cool magistrate, actually, or judge, whatever, And so he's like, here, do this, do that, and whatever. And I did. And then, now in the interim, I had talked to the city manager and told her, I'm not going to get a permit because I don't recognize your authority in this matter. And everything I've read talking about International Building Code, which when I read that section that you're quoting there, it talks about residential housing and commercial, which I am not. I'm a private residence on private property. So then you're wrong, because that's why we have courts. In a civil society, two people disagree, then eventually, if you can't work it out politely, you go to court. And the judge makes up his mind. So I've been, at 5 or 6 pretrial conferences. And finally, she's like, you didn't send me those pictures. And I was like, yeah, I know. But the city hasn't told me that they will take my pictures, actually consider them as built, tell me how much money you want for this alleged permit that I was supposed to be issued, and then sign off on it saying that I'm done and it's now closed. And she's like, well, I don't know if they would do that. And I go, well, then I don't know. See, and what it is, it's my wife was asking, she goes, well, why would she tell you to do this, that, and the other thing? And I was like, well, the same reason a cop will ask you to say the alphabet backwards. Put your head back and touch the tip of your nose. Walk a straight line. So you don't have to do that. Because you have the Fifth Amendment. You have rights. And you don't have to testify against yourself, which is exactly what you would be doing if you tried to touch your nose. Tried to say the alphabet backwards. Anybody that tries to say the alphabet backwards is just fucking drunk no matter what. That's just stupid. So they're gathering evidence. Well, and that's what the city wants me to do. See, they want me to hand them pictures, which what's that do? It proves that I built something. And then once I fill out the form for the permit and give them money, now they have the right to walk on private property. See, and I'd rather they just got a judge to grant them a search warrant if they think they have a need to know. And they don't. So it starts getting into more and more gray areas. So that was all pretty easy to end up at this point. You just ignore some bureaucrat and the system kicks in and drags you to court. Well, now my big mystery is, what do I do? Let's say I go to court in a month or two. And let's say I plead my case. And the city, makes their case. And the judge goes, you know what, Mark? I think you're an asshole. Showing no signs of remorse for all this, bullshit authority they think they got. You're guilty. Pay the fine of whatever. And, we might even make you spend a few days in jail because it's 2 class 2 misdemeanors. And we just don't think you give a fuck. Well, now then I'm going to appeal it. I don't know how to do that. So my one friend that is almost a lawyer, he said, well, you just go to the court, when you're there, and when you walk out and you get a form and you fill it all out and hand it to the city or the judge or the court or whoever gave you the form. I'm sure there's some money involved, and you hand them a few dollars, and then they set it for appeal. Now I'm doing this all myself. See, everybody's like, well, Mark, you need to get a lawyer. It's like, no, I don't need to get a lawyer, because if I got a lawyer, that would cost thousands of dollars. Well, then I might as well just kiss their ring and get the permit and take some pictures. And, I could have avoided all this 2 years ago. I just didn't want to. Not because I'm an asshole. Well, yeah, that's part of it. But I didn't want to do it. I don't recognize their authority. And quite honestly, they don't have any authority when it comes to some things. They've assumed an authority, but that doesn't mean they have it. But because they've been doing it since, the inception of planning and zoning, to keep Darky out of Whitey's neighborhood, it's now become a thing. See, it's like when people go, "Did you get a permit?" And I say, "No." They're like, "You didn't get a permit?" Like, what? Are you admitting that you just committed a crime? It's like, no, I'm just saying I didn't kiss their fucking ring because I don't give a shit about them. And so now all of a sudden, see, you're the asshole. It's like, you didn't slow down in a school zone? Well, I did slow down, but not slow enough, I thought. But, it was summer and school was closed, so yeah, but we have rules for a reason, Mark. You just can't, fucking run over little puppies with a rototiller, you sick motherfucker. It's like, no, it's not what I did. I have a home, and I added on to it because I fucking choose to. Didn't affect you or anyone around me. So that's where you get into having a hard time learning what to do, because no matter who you talk to, you got to remember they're a lawyer. They're either a lawyer for you or against you, but they're a lawyer. And anytime, if you're not sure if a lawyer thinks what he's talking about is important, just wait until you get that fucking bill. They're like doctors. It's like, I'm a lawyer. It's like, oh, I'm a doctor. If I say to eat your fruits and vegetables and you don't do it, well, you're just denying medical science. It's like, no, I'm keto. No, keto's bullshit. Why do you say that? Because I'm a doctor. So all these zoning laws are bullshit. And I'm sure they think I'm wrong. Why? Because they're a lawyer. So you really got to filter this shit out, see, and you really got to do your own homework with most things in life that are important. Nutrition, and legal problems, and religion, and the fucking weather, I guess. Because otherwise you're not going to know what's going on. So that's where I'm at right now, is trying to maybe, and maybe I'll document it in writing, maybe like a fucking legal journal, because I need to see the flow, because I'll make mistakes, but then at least when I do my appeal, hopefully they don't, I have to have that covered enough, because see, a lot of things that you don't know and I don't know in the legal system are very detrimental to your freedom and liberty if you don't know what the fuck's going on. So you go to court and you lose this case, and then you go, I want to file an appeal. And the clerk says, well, you can't. You're like, why not? It's like, well, you would have had to tell the judge that at sentencing. Like, well, I didn't know that. It's like, ignorance of the law is no excuse, motherfucker. Now, I would think the magistrate in my town, because he was so helpful when it came to explaining that the prosecutor is not your friend, would probably say, now, this is just the ruling of this court. You have the right to appeal it. And if you're going to appeal it, please tell me now. So that way you can go down there and fill out that form, and then we're all in the loop. Or he might, or I might just go, here's my paperwork, I want to appeal, and they might go, okay. But there are I's that have to be dotted and T's that must be crossed, or you could end up in a shit ton of trouble. Or at least, if nothing else, not being able to appeal something. Now, I mean, granted, if you did rototill over a bunch of puppies and then murder 5 or 6 people and then rape the farmer's daughter and kill the farmer and blow up the city and protest and riot and burn down the police department, that would be okay. And even if you got convicted of all this crimes, you could appeal it until hell froze over. And by the time you were really old, like I am now, you might be able to just tell the courts, hey, I'm really old and I'm sick and I'm not feeling good. Can you release me? You know, I've served my time to humanity. And they'd go, sure, Mark. We don't care. Hell, we let cop killers get out. So you gotta watch what you're doing. That's what I'm saying. And so it helps to talk to people. And I got 5 or 6 tabs open in my Google Chrome at home on, you know, filing appeals. And I didn't just type in filing an appeal, but in the state of Arizona, because that's where it counts. And it says you'd have to file that appeal in the jurisdiction where the case was won or lost. Now, if it's a criminal case, see, here's where I'm talking about, gray area. If it's a criminal case, only the defendant can file for an appeal. But I think in a civil matter, either party could appeal. So if I got found innocent, the city might file an appeal and go, hey, wait a minute. You let him off pretty fucking easy, considering he told us to go pound sand for 2.5 years and laughed at us all the way to the fucking courthouse. We can't allow this to stand. Hell, we would have fucking anarchy. People building houses and shit without kissing our fucking ring. Oh my God. Are you fucking serious? You can't add on. Why not? Because you need a permit. Why? Because I'm a fucking lawyer. So, you need to learn this shit. So, if any of you would like to join, you know, Defund Bureaucracy, just find it on Facebook. Multiple window closed. All right, well, I don't know what you're talking about, but it appears that my camera's still working, so fine. Anyway, you need to study, and if you live in the area and you want to be part of it, then by all fucking means, let me know. But I'm really thinking that there's more to this fighting City Hall than meets the eye. So I guess it doesn't really matter where you live. Defund Bureaucracy could be a website or a Facebook group that helps multiple people in multiple areas. If you're in, you know, Cochise County, one of my many 200 listeners, then send me an email, mark@prepperguy.com. I mean, you can still join the group, and you know, but you know, I'd like to talk to you more on a proximity level, you know, of where we're at and what can we do about this, because every court has their judges and their proclivities. So it would be important to join that and to reach out and talk to me about it, because you know, these are the things that, you know, try man's heart and destroy America, quite literally. I mean, I look at this as just kind of like an exercise in self-defense. But it does weigh on me, and it does bother me quite a bit, because, you know, there's still something hanging over my head. It's not, you know, like life in prison hanging over my head, but it's still loss of money, loss of time, might even spend a few days in jail or a fucking year of probation or something, which would be a death sentence then, because I just wouldn't go. I'd be so pissed. So it's important, and it's trying, but also because the state of America nowadays. I mean, in Tennessee, that's why I used that as an example earlier. Tennessee now has passed an order, the governor, and you have to read all 10, 11 pages of it. But it's basically saying that they're going to have vaccine internment camps. They don't call them that, but that's in light of this bullshit pandemic and this fake vaccine, they're gonna start locking people up, forcing them to get vaccinated, or just lock them up, for whatever. I don't. I didn't get a chance to listen to it because I had to leave on my measure here, my estimate. So I will finish listening to it today, later. But it's on, Brighteon.com, and that's BRIGHTEON, Brighteon.com. And his name is Mike Adams. He actually owns Brighteon. Started it himself, but because he got banned from everybody years ago. And it's the Health Ranger Report, HR Report, is his channel. And he talks a lot about the COVID bullshit and the lockdowns and all this stuff. So it's becoming more and more important for you and I to be involved locally, more so than nationally. If we all turned our back on the national bullshit, we would do a lot better, because then all of a sudden, politicians would stop even fucking worrying about what's going on in Washington, because all of our attention would be local. So all of our representatives would be, leaving Washington, coming back home where they're supposed to be, trying to rally support for their next bullshit boondoggle and crap fest they want to shovel down our fucking throat. So it's very important that we stay involved locally, because that's where change will happen. Locally, not on a national level. All they can do nationally is sue each other. And then everybody stands around waiting for the judge to make a decision. Well, you know what? Here's how fucking stupid that is. Roe v. Wade, what's that, back in the 80s or whenever that bullshit case went to court? Well, that was supposed to be settled law. And yet, here it is, fucking 40 years later, everybody, they might overturn Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade this, Roe v. Wade that. What about Roe v. Wade? Well, I thought it was fucking settled. So you can go to court and sue the fuck out of everybody. Doesn't matter, because it'll change. Everything fucking changes. And so that's all Washington wants to do, is go to court. And then they'll put together a case that's so half-ass flimsy that, whether they win or lose, the outcome is bullshit. It's a house of cards. And if you read the language, it really is bullshit. It's like my court case. What am I really in trouble for? Failure to stop work when I was told to stop work. When I got that pink piece of paper, I didn't stop. And violation of a city ordinance backed up by International Building Code. And when you read it, just like a traffic ticket, you read a traffic ticket, it says all 4 tires must come to a complete stop to be a legal stop. And the reason they say that is because somebody might have stopped, but then rolled around the corner so that one tire kept rolling, and it wasn't considered a real stop. And it was, because some lawyer was smarter than the cop that wrote the ticket or whatever the fuck. You know, it's like DUI laws, you know. And my almost lawyer friend was telling me, he goes, well, he was helping a young kid in court, and the kid had gotten in a wreck. He was drunk, got in a wreck, and he was, you know, all these DUI charges. And I just laughed, and I said, well, you know, when he got in a wreck, you know, was there anyone around? He's like, no. And I go, so how can they prove he was drunk while he was driving the vehicle, or that he was even driving the vehicle? And he's like, exactly. So you always got to read what they're saying and then understand what that means for you and your life and how you're going to fight it. You know, so you look up the statute, the state statute, you read it. It says, you know, oh, the cop gave me a ticket for not stopping. But this ordinance says that I was driving a boat on the lake while intoxicated. Like, were you on the lake at that day? No. He wrote down my truck license plate number and the description of my vehicle. It wasn't a boat. So then you go to court and go, Your Honor, I don't understand these charges. And the judge will just fucking read it right out of the book. Driving a boat while intoxicated. He goes, no, I wasn't. You go, look at the address where he pulled me over. It's like, oh, case dismissed. You know, they fucked up. So you always have to be watching what the fuck is going on. So I've been rambling on for about 30 minutes. I got to look something up here. I had to pull up my map. Make sure I don't fucking drive all the way into New Mexico, because I might not come back. So I think this is my exit, San Simon. So I'm gonna say goodbye for a minute, and then I'll be back on the way home probably.
We've made too many compromises already, too many retreats. They invade our space, and we fall back.
I'm your huckleberry.
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
That's just my game.